got to give the people time. Give the people what they want. Don't you know you got to give the people what they want. Well, I done been all over the world, and everybody feels the same. Decision. I said we're ready for change. I know you said give the people, give it up, give people what they want. Well, don't you know you got to give the people, give people what they want.
All right. Hello, hello, Northeast Iowa. Thank you all for coming, braving the snow, and getting out tonight. My name is Jono. I'm a local field organizer here in Northeast Iowa for Bernie. Yeah. So I grew up on a family farm in Iowa, and we went bankrupt during the farming crisis. That haunted and stigmatized my family for years. This campaign wants to change the power dynamic between people, corporations, and our government. And something key to this is building power. So I want to start off with one of my favorite quotes. The biggest way we give up power is by thinking we don't have any in the first place. I want to share with you how we're building power we need in order to win Iowa and the nomination. We've only got 31 days until the February 3rd caucus. So let's get right into it. It's not going to be easy to win this election. We're taking on the powerful donor class, billionaires and corporations who have rigged our economy and our government to work for them, not us. That means it's going to take all of us knocking on doors, talking to people we don't know, making phone calls to win. And that's exactly what we've been doing here in Iowa. So far, we've knocked on over 200,000 doors across the state. Yeah. And we've made over 4 million voter contact attempts in the state. This is how we move the polls, and this is how we win. It's not going to be easy, I'm not going to lie. Winning in Iowa isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take making a choice, committing to put it all on the line right here in Iowa to create a political revolution. And so right now I'd like to ask you to take out your phone and text commit to 67760. That's commit to 67760. That's to commit to caucus for Bernie on February 3rd. All right, my fellow organizers and our volunteers out there, can you raise your hands, please? Look around, folks. Thank you. Yeah, give them a good round of applause. So right now I'm asking you, if you haven't signed up to knock doors, sign up with an organizer with a shifting sheet standing near you. If you haven't signed up to be a volunteer for Bernie at our caucuses, which is very important, sign up with an organizer near you. We have 31 days to make history, and I have no doubt that if we organize, talk to people we know and people we don't know, and fight like hell, we're going to win on caucus night.
Hi, my name is Ellen Rockney. Thanks. I'm a business owner here in Decorah and a proud citizen of the Driftless region. Hey, on New Year's Eve, I was at a party, and a friend said he hadn't decided on who to caucus for. He wanted to hear about why Bernie. Yes. Several hours later, I realized he might have been expecting more of an elevator speech. I grew up in a one-company town. I was a junior in high school when my dad and hundreds of others lost their jobs when Hormel Foods busted the union in Austin, Minnesota. Dad regrouped and went on to sell light bulbs until well into his 70s, but our hometown has never been the same. I know a young couple just out of college for several years now. Even though every month they pay the maximum they can afford on their student loans, they owe nearly as much as when they had just graduated. The other day, my neighbor told me her brother is filing for bankruptcy. He had built a business selling useful things on Amazon. When Amazon saw that he was doing well, they decided to sell the same things. Guess whose stuff came up first in a search? Then they gouged him on storage for the inventory he wasn't able to move. I believe that corporate rule is the crisis of our time. One of the many reasons Bernie has my vote is because he doesn't answer to any of those corporations. And he never has. What a remarkable thing to say about a career politician in America. Thank you, Bernie, for being a true public servant. Yes. I see what Bernie is working for, and I think most of us want the same thing. The dream of America that is yet to be, to live in a land where there is truly liberty and justice for all. To know our country is standing for a world where everyone has enough. My friend Megan's grandma forwards all the Republican Party mail to her because she's worried that Megan has gotten too liberal. Megan's grandpa, a lifelong Republican, told her the other day that He likes listening to that Bernie Sanders guy. So do I, Megan's grandpa. I wonder if we might sit down and have a beer one night and talk more about Bernie and the new world he's helping us build together. That's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Go, Bernie!
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to talk. Thank you. Hi, I'm so excited to be here today. My name's Allison. I'm a first-year student at Luther College, and the 2020 election, yes, the 2020 election is the first one that I get to vote in, and I am so excited and so proud to be caucusing on February 3rd for Bernie Sanders. About 2 months ago, I went to the opening of the Winneshiek County campaign headquarters. I was a little nervous to be going alone and not really sure what to expect, but I was thrilled when I walked into a room full of people just as motivated and excited for the Sanders campaign as myself. I left inspired by this amazing community of Sanders supporters. After this initial meeting, I got connected with Bernie supporters at Luther. We thought we could drum up some more support for Sanders if we talked to students on campus. So an organizer from town delivered a kit of flyers, buttons, and stickers, and we started knocking dorm room doors. My friends started noticing me spending more of my time volunteering for the Bernie campaign. They wanted to know why I support Bernie Sanders. Well, for me, it's simple. Bernie is right on healthcare, the environment, and scores of other issues. Most important to me, Bernie gives me hope in a future. Bernie gives me hope in a future where my well-being is not a question, but guaranteed. A future where I don't have to worry how I'm going to pay for the medication to treat my chronic condition. A future where I can buy a home and start a family without the burden of student loan. As a young person, I am genuinely scared of climate change and the effect that it has on my future. What will the world look like for me and my friends? Will we inherit a world that is healthy and habitable, or will we inherit a dying planet? My generation is not responsible for a man-made carbon emissions crisis, but we are tasked with solving it. Bernie recognizes that climate change is the single greatest threat our society has ever faced. But more importantly, it is the single greatest opportunity. We have a chance to revolutionize our energy infrastructure and create millions of good-paying jobs. The Green New Deal Bernie is proposing uses this powerful opportunity to create new systems that are not only ecologically sustainable, but are founded on the physical, emotional, political, legal, and economic well-being of the global majority. Bernie Sanders is fighting for a future to believe in, and that is why I am door knocking in dorms, phone banking over break, and with you here today. Our revolution is stronger than ever. The Sanders Pocket Change Brigade out-fundraised the entire Democratic field yet again. We welcomed more than 300,000 new donors, raising $35 million in $18 increments. They said this revolution was not possible, but we proved that a campaign rooted in the interest of the working class is more powerful than the billionaire class and their think tanks. Together, we will build a better future for everyone, one donor and one door knock at a time. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Tripp, It's such an honor to be able to introduce to you all tonight Senator Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Now, it's kind of hard because there are too many things that I want to talk about in this very short time with you. I want to talk about labor unions, how Bernie has marched with more striking workers than probably all of the other candidates combined. He has put miles on those walking shoes that other politicians just keep in a box in the closet. I want to talk about climate change, how Bernie's plan and commitment to a Green New Deal is the boldest and most sober. And as a result, he has earned the only A rating by the youth-led Sunrise Movement. I want to talk about education. As a public school teacher, I'm proud to say that Bernie has received more donations from teachers than any other profession. Yeah, way to go, teachers. I believe that's because we understand that what is most ailing our schools is obscene inequality. Nearly 1/4 of the kids in this country live in poverty. Folks, we've got to elect someone who is willing to stand up to the billionaire class that is rigging our economy, controlling our media, and buying our politicians. Yeah. And we all know Bernie doesn't play that game. I also want to talk to you about Bernie's foreign policy, Medicare for all, parental leave, universal child care, his unflagging history of integrity and consistency. But as I've knocked on doors the last few months volunteering for Bernie's campaign, what I hear people saying again and again is, whoever can beat Trump. All right, yeah. Then let's talk about that for a minute. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll shows Bernie beats Trump 40% to 36% nationally, the strongest of all the Democratic candidates. A Morning Consult poll shows that Senator Sanders has the highest favorability rating among Democrats as a whole at 74%. Yeah. Bernie's campaign raised $96 million in 2019 without super PACs or bundlers. 5 million contributions, unprecedented, all at an average of $18, as you've heard. And speaking of fundraising support, when we look at counties that went for Obama and then flipped to Trump in 2016, we see Sanders at least doubling everyone else in the number of individual donors. That's big. We have to be serious about winning in 2020. And we've got to be thinking about 2022, 2024, 2026, 2028, 2030. Senator Sanders has overwhelming support from the youngest voters. Nominating Bernie Sanders means seriously strengthening the Democratic Party in elections to come. Nominating Bernie Sanders means more young and progressive-minded people getting involved in politics. Nominating Bernie Sanders means dramatically increasing voter turnout, which means more Democrats getting elected all the way down the ballot. In nominating Bernie Sanders, will send a powerful message and will supply more than just hope that change is indeed going to happen. With Bernie Sanders as our candidate, I believe we can win in November and beyond. Thank you. And without further ado, Senator Bernie Sanders.
you. Thank you. In case you haven't noticed, there are a lot of people here tonight. Whoa. See, I could see that the people of Iowa, like the people of Vermont, don't get intimidated by a little bit of snow, right? We're tough. For coming out. Let me thank the Lizzie Trio for their music. Let me thank Ellen Rockney for her remarks. Allison Breen for her remarks. And I was just listening on live stream. We live stream these events. And I was listening to Jim Tripp. He was doing so good. I'm prepared to give him the microphone to continue. It was, my head was swelling. My ego was getting very big. Thank you, Jim. What I want to do tonight is talk about how our campaign is different than other campaigns and how our administration will most certainly be different. Our campaign has two major functions. Number one, we're going to win here in Iowa. We're going to win the Democratic nomination. And together we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of our country. And the reason we're going to defeat Trump is not just that he is a pathological liar, and that the people of this country, regardless of their political views, do not want to be in front of a TV with their kids and watching a president who lies all of the time. That's not the model we want for our kids. People understand that in a democracy, whether it's me or anybody else, people will disagree on occasion with the president. We all disagree. But we don't need somebody who lies all of the time. We don't need somebody who is a bully. We don't need somebody who in the most ugly ways puts people down. We don't need somebody who is intentionally trying to divide our country up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion. That is not what a president does. So we've got a lot of problems as a nation. Everybody knows that. But we are not going to succeed in addressing these issues unless we go forward as one people. Unless we respect democracy, one person, one vote. But the second reason why we're going to win this election is because we have an agenda that speaks to the needs of working people and not just the 1%. And in a sense, in a very profound sense, you can tell what our administration is going to be like based on how we are running this campaign. And when I say our campaign is a campaign of the working class of this country, by the working class and for the working class, that is not just rhetoric. That is the way it is. And what we have already done, all of us together, is fundamentally transform the way campaigns are funded in the United States of America. We've done that. Just a few years ago, not a very long time ago, the way campaigns were funded is candidates, Republican and Democrat, went to wealthy people's homes and they sat down in some mansion. They talked to 20 or 30 people who were very, very wealthy, and they heard their concerns, and they walked out with a few $100,000. That is not the way we run our campaign. We don't go to wealthy people's homes and collect bundled checks. We don't have a super PAC which is funded by billionaires in a way that is undisclosed. We don't do that. We don't have a super PAC. We don't need a super PAC. What we have done in this campaign is to reach out to working people throughout this country and ask them to work with us to help create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And the result of that, which is revolutionary, we have already begun the political revolution. What we have done in this campaign is receive more than 5 million individual contributions from more than 1.3 million Americans. That is more contributions from more people than any campaign at this point in the history of the United States of America. So when you see the establishment getting nervous, and they are getting nervous, all right? And that is because they understand that working people all over this country are standing up and that we need to move this country in a way that works for all of us, not just the 1%. And the reason that we're going to win here in Iowa and in New Hampshire and across this country, and the reason we're going to beat Trump, is because we have an agenda that speaks to the needs of the working class and the middle class of this country. People are tired of the reality that over the last 45 years, despite huge increases in technology and worker productivity, the average worker in America is not making a nickel more than he or she did 45 years ago. That is not acceptable. The American people are tired of working 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table. The American people are tired of the obscene level of income and wealth inequality which exists in America today, where 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, where the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92% of American society. So the American people are prepared to stand up to the greed and corruption of the corporate elites, and I'm talking about Wall Street, and I'm talking about the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel industry and the military-industrial complex. And the whole damn 1%. And that is what this campaign is about. And when we talk about an agenda, let me be very clear what we are talking about. We are talking about raising the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. I have talked to too many people here in Iowa and around this country who cannot raise kids on 10, 11, or 12 bucks an hour. If you work 40 hours a week in America, the richest country in the history of the world, you should not be living in poverty. We are talking about equal pay for equal work. Women should not make 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. And because you and I know that workers in unions earn substantially more than non-union workers, we're going to make it easier for millions of workers to join unions when they want to. Nelson Mandela, one of the great heroes in our lifetimes, said something that is very, very profound. This is what he said, and I quote. He said, "It always seems impossible until it happens." It always seems impossible until it happens. In other words, sometimes we look out and we say, how can we do this? How can we do that? And after it's done, people say, no big deal. Obviously, you should have done that. What was the problem? But if you think about history, I want you to think for a moment about history, put us in the context of where we are today. Think about 100 years ago, 100 years ago now, women in America did not have the right to vote. Women in America could not go out and do the work they wanted to do, could not get the education that they wanted to do. And the common consciousness of the time was that women's place is in the home to have babies and so forth. But women fought back and changed that definition of who women were. It didn't happen from the top on down. It happened because women stood up and fought for justice. So if you today tell your kids or your grandchildren there was a time when women couldn't vote, they would look at you with quizzical eyes. That's ridiculous. All right? Think about the history of the labor movement in America. 150 years ago, workers had no rights. They were treated like beasts of burden, but they stood up and fought back and created unions to give them dignity, changed consciousness about the rights of a worker. Think about the civil rights movement. 100 years ago, massive amounts of segregation coming out of the outrage of slavery. People couldn't vote because of the color of their skin, couldn't drink at a damn water fountain. People fought back by the millions and changed that reality and said that we will end racism in America. Think about if we were here, I'm not talking 100 years ago, I'm talking 30 years ago, 20 years ago. If we were in this room 20 years ago, when I were to tell you that the day would soon come when gay marriage would be legal in every state in this country, most of you would not have agreed with me. You would have said, that's impossible. That will never happen. It happened because the gay community and their straight allies stood up and fought together to say that in America, people have a right to love whoever they want, regardless of their gender. Now, I say all of these things. I give you these examples, and we can give you many more, to say that sometimes when things seem impossible, the idea of workers' rights, the idea of women being treated as first-class citizens, the idea of wiping out segregation and so forth. When they seem so impossible, when you look back, doesn't seem so hard. And that's where we are right now. We have challenges in front of us that the establishment and the system says, you can't do it. That's too big an idea. You got to think small. You can't think big. And our job in this campaign is not just to take on Wall Street and all the big money interests. We got to do that. The tougher fight is taking on the limits of our own imagination. The limits of our own imagination in terms of the kind of country we can become. 4 years ago, I came to Iowa and I said, you know what? We got to rethink education in America. Iowa, in fact, has been one of the leaders in public education in the history of this country. And Iowa make sure that all kids, working class kids, had the opportunity to get at least a high school education. That's an extraordinary achievement. But the world has changed in the last 100+ years. 4 years ago when I came here, I said, you know what? Maybe today we should demand that public colleges and universities are tuition free. Four years ago, that seemed like a radical idea. You know what's happened since? All across the country, states and cities and counties are moving in that direction. A couple of months ago in New Mexico, all of their young people will be able to go to public colleges and universities tuition free. 3 major medical schools in the last year or two have now tuition free medical school. All right? So an idea that just a few years ago seemed to be radical, people begin thinking about it and understand, of course the world has changed. Of course our kids need a higher education to do well. And we are making progress on that. And there's another area that we're making progress. 4 years ago, we talked about the outrageous level of student debt. Well, my view is that if this country can give 11 years ago, we could bail out the crooks on Wall Street. If 2 years ago, Trump and his friends could give $1 trillion in tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations, we can cancel all student debt in America. So I think, when you think outside of the box, people say, Bernie, your ideas are radical. I'll tell you what's radical. Giving tax breaks to billionaires, that's radical. Bailing out crooks who nearly destroyed our economy and not throwing them into jail, that's pretty radical. But making sure that all of our young people can go to college or trade schools, and we can cancel all student debt by imposing a modest tax on Wall Street speculation, I don't think that's radical at all. I think it's exactly what we should be doing. And I'll tell you something else that is not radical, that is so long overdue that it is pathetic. And that is that the United States must join every other major industrial country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right. That's not radical. Tell you what is radical, what is extreme, is today in America we are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. You got that? Over $11,000 for every man, woman, and child. Twice what the Canadians and what most European countries are spending. And yet, despite that huge expenditure, 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. 30,000 people die each year because they don't get to a doctor on time. And unbelievably, 500,000 Americans last year went bankrupt because of medically related debts. Medically related debts for 500,000 people. So let me tell you what is radical. What is radical is when somebody develops cancer and has to go through all of that treatment and has to worry about so much. What is radical and unacceptable is that that family goes bankrupt. That is not what this country should be about. And I'll tell you what else is radical. This morning we had a meeting, talked to people. People are telling us they're paying working class people, middle class people, paying $15,000 or $20,000 a year for health care. $25,000, I beg your forgiveness here. All right? People paying premiums of $1,500 a month, deductibles of $10,000, co-payments, paying outrageous prices for prescription drugs. What is outrageous is that last year, while prices sold for prescription drugs, in some cases 10 times more than other countries are paying. Meanwhile, 6 major drug companies made $69 billion in profit. That is outrageous. So, you know, in this country, you've had presidents going way, way back, going back to Teddy Roosevelt, going back to FDR in the 30s and the 40s, Harry Truman, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama. All of them, in one way or another, talked about health care is a right and universal health care. Well, I think 100 years of talk is enough. Now is the time to take on the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies, and now is the time to pass Medicare for all. And let me tell you, now when you take on the healthcare industry that made $100 billion in profits last year. You got that? $100 billion in profits when so many of our people are uninsured and underinsured and we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Not going to be an easy fight. So all they got to do is take 1% of their profits. That's $1 billion. And use it on TV ads and radio ads and newspaper ads and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the American people understand the cruelty and the dysfunctionality of the current system. The American people understand that a rational healthcare system is one that guarantees quality care to all, not one designed to make billions in profit for the healthcare industry. So, brothers and sisters, we got to fight on our hands because these people will do anything possible to maintain the enormous profits that they are currently making. But at the end of the day, the people in Iowa and the people of Vermont cannot afford to pay $15,000 or $20,000 a year for health insurance. Their employers cannot afford to pay huge amounts of premiums. We are going to take on and we will defeat the healthcare industry and pass Medicare for all. Now, there's another issue that I want to say a few words on that is of enormous consequence. And that is, you know, I disagree with Donald Trump on virtually everything. Probably forget the virtual, everything, you know. I was being generous. But one area where what Trump is doing is not only incredibly harmful to our country, but the entire world, is the area of climate change. Now, for years, now also let me give you another radical perspective here. You ready for something really radical? All right, hang on. I don't want people collapsing. We got some medical attention here. I believe in science. Oh. I know. It's a radical statement, but sometimes, you got to own up to things. And my administration will be based on listening to scientists. Now, what the scientists have told us for many, many years is climate change is real, of course. Climate change is caused by human activity, the emission of carbon. And climate change is already doing devastating harm to our country and to the rest of the world. That's what they have told us for years. But now what they are telling us in the last year or last 2 years, they are saying, sorry, we underestimated the severity, the degree, and the speed at which climate change is ravaging our country and the world. And what we are now seeing, and I want you to, when you look at climatology, not that I'm a great physicist. I failed physics in college, so I'm the last guy who should be talking about this. But what climatology is about is looking at climate over a period of millions and millions of years. It's not the weatherman telling you whether it's going to snow tomorrow. It's looking over millions of years. And what is astounding is we are seeing changes in the climate, not over millions of years. We are seeing it with our own eyes in our own lifetimes. And if you just project outward for the next 50 or 100 years, what this world will be like if the change continues at the level we are seeing and gets even worse. What you understand is we are looking at a situation where if we do not act boldly, this world will be becoming increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable. And what the scientists are telling us, and we're seeing it, we see it with photos, is the polar ice cap is melting at a much faster rate than they had predicted. The oceans are warming at a faster rate than they had anticipated. That means that sea levels will rise at a much faster rate. And if we don't get our act together, by the end of this century, American cities like Miami, like New Orleans, like Charleston, South Carolina, like New York City will be partially or completely underwater. Countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh, low-level countries, will be significantly underwater. Significant parts of China underwater. What we are seeing now is more drought. And the drought is leading to the horror of what we are seeing today in Australia. Anybody see those pictures? We posted something. Came from the Wall Street Journal, a video of what's going on there. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Australia is burning. Okay? And that is what countries all over the world may look like in 50 or 100 years as a common occurrence. When you talk about drought, it's not only wildfires like the ones we have seen in California. I was in a town called Paradise, California. That name sound familiar? A couple of years ago, they had this terrible fire. 86 people were killed. The town was virtually destroyed. It's a sight to see. It's a sight you'll not forget if you visit it. All right, that is what we're looking at in the future. When we talk about drought, understand that means that the crop production of farmers in Iowa and all over this world will go down because their growing seasons will be shorter. We're talking about more extraordinary weather disturbances, extreme weather disturbances. You saw Venice, Italy underwater last month. You all see that? Houston, Texas underwater. Incredible amounts of water, downpours, rain downpours. What you're talking about is species being wiped out, fish being wiped out all over the world, and people depend upon fish for their protein, not going to have any fish. What the United Nations tells us is that we're looking at over 100 million climate refugees, people around the world who can no longer find clean water or land to grow their crops on. They're going to move and migrate, causing massive international crises. So we have in front of us just a very, very existential, what's called as an existential crisis facing the planet. And I wish I could tell you that if America did everything right tomorrow, we could solve it. We can't. We got to work with the whole world. You know, so while Trump is busy bombing Iran, or Iraq, I should say, you know, maybe what we should be doing is figuring out how, as a planet, we work together instead of going to war with each other, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year. So this is not easy stuff. And I wish I didn't have to tell you this. I mean, I wish I could tell you that, you know, we can do a little bit here and build a few solar panels, and I will build a few more wind turbines and we'll be in great shape. I wish I could tell you that, but that is not the truth. The truth is that American leadership now is going to have to reach out to countries all over the world. And maybe, just maybe, as I just mentioned, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction, maybe the world comes together and fights against our common enemy, which is climate change. All right. Now, I've been criticized because the climate change proposal that I've introduced is the most sweeping, comprehensive proposal ever introduced, I think, by any candidate for federal office. And people say, Bernie, it's too expensive, too big. And I want you all to think for a moment. If we are talking about saving this planet for our children and grandchildren, I have 7 beautiful grandchildren. If we're talking about saving this planet for future generations, saving the planet to make it healthy and habitable, you tell me how much is too much to spend. And when we talk about the Green New Deal, which is the plan upon which our proposal is based, we are talking about creating up to 20 million good-paying union jobs. We are talking about retrofitting older buildings. In Iowa, you got a lot of older buildings. Vermont, we got a lot of older buildings, making them energy efficient. We're talking about transforming our transportation system away from fossil fuel. We're talking about a massive investment in wind, solar, biofuels. We are talking about standing up to the fossil fuel industry and telling them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. So this is a fundamental moral issue. And that is, our parents told us, don't leave the room, the house that you're in, dirtier than when you found it. We have a moral responsibility to make sure that we leave this planet, our only planet, healthy and habitable for our kids and future generations. I don't think we have a choice on this matter. And we talk about a progressive agenda. When we talk about a humane, compassionate society, it means that we have got to address a broken and racist criminal justice system. There is no rational reason why in the United States today we have more people tonight in jail than any other country on earth, including China, a communist authoritarian country 4 times our size. We have more people in jail than China does. Okay? So what we are going to do as a nation is invest in our legal in every state in this country. And in my view, we should expunge the records of those arrested for possession of marijuana. Donald Trump thinks he is going to win re-election by dividing us up. And one of the ways he does that is by demonizing the undocumented people in this country. What we are going to do is end that ugliness, end that demonization. We are going to fight for and pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship for all of the undocumented. On our first day in office through executive order, we will end all of Trump's racist immigration executive orders. On our first day in office through executive order, we will reestablish the legal status of the 1.8 million young people and their parents eligible for the DACA program. We are going to end the ICE raids which are terrorizing communities all across this country. And under our administration, no federal agent will ever yank babies from the arms of their mothers or throw children into cages. That is not what America should be doing. There's another issue out there that is on the minds of all of us, and is the horror of what we see every week, every 2 weeks on TV in terms of mass shootings and gun violence. Let me just simply say this. Our gun safety policy will be determined by the American people, not the NRA. Trump and the Republican leadership may be intimidated by the NRA. I am not intimidated by the NRA. And I'm not going to tell you that there aren't differences of opinion as how best to go forward. There are. But there has been in recent years, as America looks at these horrible shootings, and it's not just the deaths that are appalling. All over this country, kids undergo these, emergency training programs to deal with a horrible situation in a school. And I remember just a few weeks ago, the woman in New Hampshire said to me, Bernie, what am I supposed to tell my 11-year-old daughter when she tells me that she wants a bulletproof backpack for Christmas? I mean, think about it. We went to school. You went to school to learn, to socialize, to do what you do. And kids today are scared. People are scared. So what we will do is go forward with the strongest gun safety legislation that we can, which includes, and this is where the American people have come together. The American people want universal and expanded background checks. If you have a history of violence, sorry, you should not be owning a gun. The American people want to end the so-called gun show loophole, which allows people to legally buy guns without a background check. The American people want to end the so-called straw man provision, which allows people to legally go into a gun store, buy guns, and then sell them to criminal elements. And I'll tell you where else the American people are today, where they weren't 5 years ago. I think after seeing all of these horrible, horrible shootings, the American people now understand something that I believe for decades, that we must end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in the United States of America. Now, I'm a United States Senator, and I spend time on the floor of the Senate, and I listen to a lot of speeches. Not the most exciting thing in the world to do. And often, my conservative Republican colleagues come forward and they say, we are conservative, we believe in small government, we believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people. Sounds fine. Well, what I say to those folks, if you believe in getting the governments and politicians off of the backs of the American people, understand that it is women who have the right to control their own bodies, not the government. So my promise to you is that I will never nominate to the Supreme Court or to a federal court anyone who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. Let me conclude, and then we'll just take a few questions. We had a long trip to where we're going tonight, but let me just say this. And that is that real change, which is what this campaign is about. If you want modest change, if you want to tinker around the edges, there are other candidates you can vote for. But if you believe in real change, what you will understand is that real change always takes place from the bottom on up, never the top on down. And that's what this campaign is about. What this campaign is about is bringing millions of people from coast to coast, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, all of our people to stand together around an agenda that works for all of us, to bring our people together to tell the corporate elite that they cannot have it all, that this country belongs to all of us. Now, as a senator, I see every day the power of Wall Street. I know that 6 banks on Wall Street have assets equivalent to half of the GDP of America, over $10 trillion. 6 banks control $10 trillion. I know the power of the drug companies who in the last 20 years have spent $4 billion on lobbying and campaign contributions to make sure that you pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. I know the power of the insurance companies. I know the power of the fossil fuel industry, which lies every day about the impact of what their product is doing to this planet. I know the power of the military-industrial complex, and that the Pentagon is the only major agency of government not to undertake successfully an independent audit. I understand that. Massive waste in the Department of Defense. I understand all that. I understand the power of the 1%. They have endless amounts of money to throw on TV and radio and to buy politicians, put ads all over the place. I know their power. But at the end of the day, the 1% is 1%. And if we stand together and not let Trump divide us up based on where we come from or the color of our skin or our sexual orientation or our religion, if we stand together around an agenda, a common sense agenda that works for all of us, no matter what that 1% does, we're going to win this struggle, we're going to defeat Trump, and we're going to create a nation that works for all of us. Thank you all very much. Or a comment. Okay. I see a gentleman back. No, excuse me. No. Man behind you. The guy's holding up whatever he's holding up. I don't know. Looks interesting, though. What do you got?
Thank you so much. Great talk. Mostly domestic. How would you handle Iran and Iraq different?
I talked about that a little bit this morning, but let me just, to answer your question, say this. War and violence have got to be the last response, not the first response. I not only voted against the war in Iraq because I had the feeling as to what kind of destabilization and misery would take place from that war. I voted against the first Gulf War as well. It seems to me that the function is to do everything possible to address international conflict through diplomacy, not through war. All right? And just look at what that war in Iraq has done. We have lost in our country And I'm the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, so I've met so many beautiful families who have been hurt so hard by that war. We've lost some 4,500 brave soldiers. Thousands and thousands came home wounded in body, without arms and legs, with PTSD and other illnesses. Children lost their dads. Mothers lost their children. And yet today in Iraq, you have a country where there is massive amounts of corruption, poverty, instability, and now many Iraqis, after spending trillions of dollars on that war, they want us out of their country. It is easy to get into war, but before you go into war, you have got to look at the unintended consequences. It doesn't always work out the way politicians think that it does. So to answer your question, whether it is the Mideast or any other place on earth, we will do everything possible, I will do, as the president of the most powerful nation on earth, to bring countries together, to sit down and yell and scream at each other, do whatever they want. But we've got to try to work out these conflicts in a way that does not involve war. That's my mission. Okay, we got a question on this side. Okay, yep, right here.
Senator Sanders, what will you do to protect the rights of LGBT Americans to not be fired or discriminated against based on their identities?
We will make sure that legislation is passed and enforced which prevents discrimination in the job place against anyone based on their race, based on their religion, or based on their sexual orientation. Our job is to create a non-discriminatory society. And that's what I believe in, and that is what I will do. Okay. Gentleman in the blue shirt.
Thank you for taking my call, Senator. My question. As you know, the field of candidates is quite large. Can you just speak to the issue of when we are down to one nominee, that every candidate does their absolute best to get this clown out of office?
Yes. Thank you. I hesitate to speak for other candidates, but I know that what I'm saying is true. I know everybody who is running for the Democratic nomination. Some of them are friends of mine from 10, 20 years. I think I can say with confidence that no matter who wins this Democratic primary process, everybody who is running for president will strongly support that candidate. Obviously, I hope it's me. But if it's not me, I will be on board, all right? I think we all understand, as you've indicated, and every Democratic candidate understands, that it is enormously important to defeat Donald Trump, and every candidate will be behind the winner in doing that. Okay. Maybe a couple more. Anybody on this side? Okay. I see a hand way, way in the back. Yep. Yes.
Thank you very much, Senator Sanders. My question is, what will you do to curtail the abuses of law enforcement and the criminal justice system to our marginalized communities in the United States of America?
Right, we will do a lot. Now, as you know, local police departments are run by local communities. But what the federal government can do through carrots and sticks and by example is move local police departments to provide local police departments with the kind of training that they are often lacking. Too often in local police departments, police officers do not have the training to know, for example, how to deal with people with mental illness or with various types of disturbances. And too often people are using lethal force rather than using other ways to address those problems. So through carrots and sticks, in other words, offering incentives and providing disincentives, we will create police departments which will understand that the goal is lethal force is the last response, not the first response. We'll talk about community policing, where police officers become part of the community, not seen as oppressors in that community. Okay, maybe one last question over here. Okay, I see a gentleman way in the back there. Yeah. Yep. Gentleman with the baby. And if you don't want to ask the question, the baby can. That's all right.
Thanks, Bernie. I love your platforms, and I share most of your ideals. I've been watching a lot of what's going on in Washington recently. One of the main concerns that I have is how do we fight the muddied interests in Washington that are funding problematic think tanks and promoting foreign policy that are not in our best interests?
That's right. Thank you. I mean, your question talks again about the power of money, and people, I think, don't fully appreciate what money buys. All right, you see the TV ads here in Iowa on healthcare paid for by the drug companies and the insurance companies. You know that billionaires spend hundreds of millions of dollars to help elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful. Corporate interests own much of the media, that you know. But what you don't see is sometimes when somebody is on TV and somebody says, well, this is somebody from a think tank, you don't know that that think tank is corporately funded. All right? And often that is the case, think tank after think tank. And they come up with studies which somehow justify what large corporations and the wealthy do. All right, all I can say, and what this campaign and our administration is about, is changing the dynamics of American politics. We take them on through a progressive agenda which rallies the American people to stand up and fight back. All right? And what this campaign is about is asking all of you, because I can't do it alone. I'm the only candidate, I think, who will tell you that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone, because we're taking on incredible power. And the day after the inauguration, I'm going to ask you again to help stand with me to take on that power so that, in fact, we create an economy and a government that works for all of us. This is tough stuff. So we've got to beat Trump, but we have to take on the power and the greed and the corruption of the corporate elite. This is not easy stuff. It really is not. And I know a lot of people get nervous when I talk about that. But we are in a moment in history when this is what we have to do. Does that make sense to people? All right. So let me apologize. We had a long day and we got about an hour and a half to go. Thank you all very much.